Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Walhamdulillah. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, remember our theme for these presentations is towards a righteous Mabroor Hajj, that is a Hajj that is done with piety. So we welcome you to lesson number 12, and the subject of our discussion is going to be the aim of Hajj. The main aim of Hajj is honoring the symbols of Allah and not violating their sacredness. We have to recognize that Allah is the All-Wise, and there is a great wisdom behind the pilgrimage. It is that the pilgrims honor the symbols of Allah and not violate the sacredness of these symbols. If one fulfills this aim, inshallah, he would achieve a Hajj Mabroor. This aim is captured in the sacrifices of the family of Ibrahim alayhimus salam. So let us reflect on some of the attitudes of this honored family, inshallah. Lessons to reflect upon from Ibrahim's family alayhimus salam. First is submission. What we notice about this family is their complete and willing submission to Allah's command. Sincerity. Sincerity in obedience to Allah's command is also something that is very clear. Sacrifice. This family, alayhim salam, were willing to sacrifice everything for Allah. Even the most beloved things to them, they were willing to sacrifice. Amongst it is the willingness of Ibrahim alayhi salam to sacrifice his only son, whom he loved so much. Patience. The patience the family exercised in implementing Allah's command. This was very clear. They were patient in every situation. Trust, Ibrahim's trust in his Lord, and Hajar's implicit trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when she said to her husband, after he said, "It is Allah who commanded him to do this," she said, "Then Allah would not abandon us." Obedience, Hajar obedience to her husband without question. Sisters, take heed. In addition to that, and even before that, is the obedience of Ibrahim alayhi salam to his Lord to take them to a place that was uninhabited and leave them there. True reliance. Although Ibrahim was leaving his family in the care of Allah, after he went behind the valley, behind the mountain, he went into the valley behind the mountain, he still supplicated to Allah to protect them. This is true tawakkul. True reliance on Allah, true trusting in Allah. Dua, begging Allah, is an important component for anyone who wishes to be a true slave, and this was demonstrated by Ibrahim alayhi salam. He is always in dua, and one of the things we noticed about Ibrahim alayhi salam is that his dua was answered. Prayer. Ibrahim's first request when he made his dua was not for food, but was for Allah to help them, that is his family, who he is leaving behind, to establish prayer. This is very important, because it is teaching us that the first and most important criterion is the connection with Allah. And Ibrahim is teaching us this from his dua to Allah. Gratitude. Even when Ibrahim supplicated for provision for them, it was only so that they be grateful, which is another act, a very essential act of worship. That the slave be grateful to his Lord for whatever Allah provides them with. Conclusion. These are some of the attributes that earned Ibrahim and his family alayhim salam the most honored and prestigious position anyone could earn in this world and in the hereafter. Just look at the amount of things that were made sacred due to their sacrifices. Note, these attitudes are necessary to possess in order to honor the symbols of Allah, inshaAllah. So, we come to deal with the symbols of Allah. That is very important, because we want to know how to honor them and how not to violate their sacredness. Honoring the sacred symbols of Allah is the most important aspect of Hajj. Hajj involves enlivening the sacrifices in the places and situations encountered by Ibrahim and his noble family alayhim salam on their journey to Mecca and whilst in Mecca. Due to these unrivaled sacrifices made in these places, Allah made them His sacred symbols. These places and statements and times have to be honored and revered. This is to teach the pilgrim so that when they return home, they would have learned how to honor the sacred symbols that are around them. And so, when they return home, they will hasten to honor the Salat, the Adhan, the Masjid, the Quran, and above all other Muslims, including themselves, etc., since these are all symbols of Allah, the Most High. Secondly, Allah makes magnifying, honoring His sacred symbols, and not to violate their sanctuary, critical for the pilgrim. In Surah Al-Hajj, after discussing various aspects of Hajj, our majestic Lord said, "Then let them," that is the pilgrims, "complete their prescribed duties, the manasik of Hajj, and perform their vows, and circumambulate the ancient house, the Kaaba in Mecca. That is the manasik, and whosoever honors the sacred things of Allah, then that is better for him with his Lord." So, in this ayah, Allah is telling you that the better thing for you when you are around these sacred symbols is to honor them. So keep this in mind and strive to always live that, inshallah. Strive to always enact that in your life whilst you're around these sacred symbols. The third thing is honoring the sacred symbols of Allah and not violating their sanctity is in reality honoring the one who made them sacred. That is Allah the Almighty. Allah, He made them sacred. So when you honor these sacred symbols, you're actually honoring the one who made them sacred, Allah. And this is the true reality of worshipping Allah alone. Allah the Almighty said, ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. That is so. And whosoever honors the symbol of Allah, indeed it is from the taqwa, that is the piety of hearts. Remember we said that Hajj, Mabroor, is a Hajj that is done with piety and righteousness. Okay? And this has to have taqwa as a center. The Hajj Mabroor the person who's doing a Hajj and wants a Hajj Mabroor has to have taqwa at the center of everything that he does. So let us discuss some of the sacred symbols that we would encounter on this trip and the attitude which is needed for us to honor them. The sacred symbols of Allah listed below are some of those things made sacred by Allah that needs our reverence and respect whilst we perform Hajj. That is, they are mentioned as symbols in the Quran and the Sunnah. Notice, we didn't choose this. These are mentioned as symbols in the Quran and Sunnah. The first is the pilgrim themselves. They are the most important symbol of Allah. Even regularly, the blood of a Muslim, his wealth and honor are sacred. When a pilgrim is in ihram, so many things are haram for them, not clipping hair, nails, covering the head, etc., that are normally halal. In addition, at all times, Muslim must be respected and honored, and especially when in ihram. Other Muslims who are in Mecca are also sacred, from the sacred symbols of Allah. Muslims who are not pilgrims are also sacred. Their blood, honor, and wealth. Dhul Hijjah is the most sacred month of the year. Fighting is not allowed in the sacred months. Hajj must be performed only in Dhul Hijjah. The 10 best days for good actions are the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So this makes it very, very important. Right? And it is sacred, as we said. The month is sacred. The Talbiyah, the theme of the Hajj and Umrah, is recommended to be repeated by every Muslim with humility and contemplation, because it's an answer to Allah's invitation. Mecca is the most sacred city on the face of the earth. There are so many things that are prohibited whilst one is in Mecca. This will be discussed inshallah separately. The Kaaba is the first house to be built for the worship of Allah, the Almighty. It is the only place that tawaf must be done as an act of worship. No other place possesses this honor. The Masjid al-Haram, the sacred mosque in Mecca, houses the Kaaba, which is in the most sacred place on the face of the earth. So the entire situation is very, very sacred and holy. The sacred symbols of Allah continued. The black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad, is a stone from Jannah, paradise, which must be kissed as an act of worship. Nothing else can be kissed as an act of worship. Maqam Ibrahim, the station of Ibrahim, is the rock upon which Ibrahim stood to raise the foundation for the Kaaba. 2 rakat should be prayed every time tawaf is done around the Kaaba. Safa and Marwa, the mountains upon which Ismail's mother stood when she was searching for provision. And it is something that it is a place that every Muslim must circle around. These two mountains, what is between them, they are the places that Muslims must circle around. The Mash'ar al-Haram in Muzdalifah The pilgrim who do not have excuse should spend the night in Muzdalifah. And if they could be at the Mash'ar al-Haram, it is better, since this is where the Prophet ﷺ stayed. Mina, the pilgrims stayed in Mina. The pilgrims stay at Mina on the 8th, 11th, 12th, and 13th day of Dhul Hijjah. So it is very important. Arafah, Hajj is Arafah. If one misses Arafah, his Hajj is invalid. The Jamarat, they have to be stoned in Mina by every pilgrim who makes Hajj. The sacrificial animal, one of the greatest symbols of this season. Even those who cannot go to Hajj are obliged to sacrifice in their homeland. The Salat, Adhan, Quran, Masjid, etc. These are symbols of Allah, not only in Mecca, but they must be revered, honored, and respected at all times. Now, these are the sacred symbols, inshallah, that you have to honor when you come, and we try to list very shortly what you have to do in relation to them, right? But as you notice, all of them has acts of worship connected to them. And as we said, each one of them, inshallah, each one of these acts of worship is something that you have to really strive to make sure that you fulfill and you put in place, because that is your responsibility, to make sure you get each act of worship in relation to each of these places correct, so that your Hajj can be a Hajj Mabroor. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to understand this and help us to strive to get a Hajj Mabroor. In the next video, what we'll do is strive to explain to you how to honor these symbols, which if you enact it would help you not to violate their sanctity, inshallah. So we ask Allah to help us and to guide us and to strengthen us and to help us to do our Hajj properly. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.